Hello, I'm going to paint a scene in watercolour and ink today. It is a shop front scene from Cotswolds. I am using this reference picture that I found in a magazine, and I thought it looked really pretty, so I'm going to try and paint this in watercolour and ink. So I'm going to use only one brush today, and this is a mop brush size 2. It's more like a medium-sized brush, medium-sized round pointed brush. You could either use one of these mop series, or you could even use a medium-sized round pointed brush size 10, or even 8 should be fine, depending on the size of the paper you are using. So I'll start off with using watercolors first, and then I'm going to try and use ink over it once that dries. So because I'm starting off on a blank sheet of paper, I need to do a lot of planning before I put down anything on the paper. Mainly because I'm going straight in with watercolors, no pencil lines or anything. It is going to look quite quirky in a way because I'm going to work really fast and see what comes out of it. So I'm going to start off with the window at the top, which again I can see the window and the front of the bakery is a dark blue, and I'm going to use a dark blue that I have in my palette. This blue is called Indanthrine blue. You can also use Prussian blue if you don't have this, although this particular blue is very bright and fresh compared to Prussian blue. If not, you can also use ultramarine blue with a little bit of crimson red to make it a deep blue. So I'm mixing my paint first, just making sure I have enough before I start painting. The consistency is not too thick or not too light, just going to create something in the middle. So it's a medium consistency with something like ink. Once I have enough, I'm going to move a little bit to the corner and add in a few more drops of water to make a lighter wash. And if you want to make it more lighter, I'm going to add more water so it becomes very light. Because I don't have a pencil line, I'm going to start off with a very light wash for the window. So starting off right at the top for the top window, I'm going to just place rough lines. And you can see they are not perfect lines. I'm not intending to do any perfect lines here. Just putting down the color. Just trying to create an impression of what I am looking at. Here in this case it is the window. Trying to make the different marks that I can see on the window. Now I'm going to go and do the window frame as well. Again, you can see none of my lines are straight. They are not neat, and I'm not looking for neat versions of lines. Just making sure that I'm putting down the details as I can see in the picture, but not exactly the same way because I'm not looking for realism. I'd like my illustrations to look a bit more quirky. So I've got the window down. I'm going to leave that there for now, and then I'm going to come down. I'm going to finish the foliage that's here before I finish the bottom of the window. I'm going to wash my brush. I'm going to start off with a little bit of sap green and lemon yellow. So let's start off with lemon yellow. Very little lemon yellow, just to indicate that there is a foliage there. Again, I'm not worried that it is going to mix with the blue. In fact, I'd like it to mix with the blue, so just marking out the area. And now I'm going to go into my sap green. I don't need a lot of it, so I'm not going to prepare a lot of it at the moment. So just a little bit. And you might have noticed I did not wash my brush as well. I just felt it wasn't necessary. So I'm working pretty fast, so I don't want the paint to dry on paper. I'd like it all to connect together, mix or bleed into each other, and that creates a beautiful effect on paper. So this is why I'm trying to work really fast, and as a result I'm not looking for any details at this stage. Okay, so that's a little bit of green. I can also do a bit of splattering if I like, to make it look extra dynamic. Now I'd like to put a little bit more colour into that foliage. I can see there is a little bit of colour in that foliage. I'm not going to copy the same thing, but probably add a colour that I feel might stand out. And here it's permanent red. I'm going to try and add that in the side. Maybe a bit over here as well, and you can see it's already mixing into the blue of the window frame as well. And splatter splatter if you like that. Now I'm going to complete the bottom part of that window, maybe taking a little bit of deeper colour here. So I've already got this medium consistency mixture, and I'm going to get some blue from there. Just going to drop in a little bit just to indicate colour. And I know it's already spreading, and I'm not really worried about how it's spreading. I'm just going to leave that colour there just to indicate that there is blue there. Maybe add a little bit of darker pigment at the top of the window where there is a little bit of shadow. Maybe another line just over here as well. So that's a little bit of the window done. I'm going to come down and finish off the rest of the wall, which I can see details of brickwork. I'm going to wash my brush clean. It is a very pale colour, and I think I'm not going to add a lot of colour. So maybe a tiny bit of let's say a tiny bit of burnt sienna. And it's very watery, very pale, and I'm going to use that just to place some details. And you can see I'm trying to touch all that colours that is wet on the paper, so I can deliberately mix them on paper, get them to bleed into each other on paper. Just drawing a line for the base of the window. And then I'm going to place a few marks like this, just to show the colour there. At the same time, I don't really need a lot of colours, so I'm not going to be too worried. Again, if it comes and touches into your wet area, do not panic, this is fine. Okay, now for the brick detail on top of the window, again I'm not going to do a lot of it, just going to get a little bit of burnt sienna. Maybe I'm going to take a little bit of this indanthrene blue, mix it with burnt sienna. I get this very dull grey colour. Maybe just add a few brick detail here. And you can see it's mixing in with the blue of the window as well. Not worried again. Going to use the same thing to add a little bit of brickwork detail. Again, this is optional. I can always add this with pen if I like, but I just like the flowy quality of watercolor. So I'm just going to try and add a little bit of grey brickwork. Again, it's not really brick-like, it's just brush strokes. If you really want those rectangular brick here, you might have to draw that with the tip of your brush. Working really fast, just not concentrating too much on the details. Now as I'm coming down, I have the shop front, the blue colour of the bakery. Wash my brush clean. I'm going to get some indanthrene blue that I already have here. I'm going to make it a bit more lighter with adding more water. And then I'm going to start off just one big bar of blue here. Okay, leaving those little specks of white unpainted is completely fine. That in fact adds more interest to the painting. So I've got that blue bar there. Maybe I'm going to add in a little bit more blue in the corner just to make it that extra bit darker. Maybe the top there as well. And here. Okay. Now before I add on the other details of the front of the bakery, I'm going to add the two hanging baskets filled with flowers over here. So for this, I'm going to wash my brush again. You can use any colourful mixture here that you like. You don't have to really look at the picture for this. I'm going to start off with some bright permanent rose. Just doing a few squiggles. I'm going to let that mix with the blue as well. I'm going to add a little bit of rose here as well. Do the same on the other side. Now I'm going to try and change the color to red and try and add a little bit of red flowers. Let that mix in with the blue as well, it doesn't matter. So adding it on the other side as well. Another easy way to add in color is to splatter. I'm going to add a few pink splatters as well, or rose splatters. I'm going to work around that with ink later on. I know the basket has got a lot of white flowers as well, so I'm not going to overwork. Now for the green, I'm going to start off with sap green. Straightforward green in my palette. I'm just going to drop in some green in between these colourful flowers. I'm not worried about details, again, not worried about leaf-like shapes, just simple brush strokes with the tip of my brush, just adding interest to the painting. And also I'm making sure that I leave a little bit of white space there as well, so it doesn't all look like a block of color. Going to do the same for the other side as well, so adding in a little bit of green, again making sure that I leave little specks of white paper unpainted. If you'd like to add more value to this bush or this hanging basket, you can use a deeper green. For deeper green, I can just mix it with the same indanthrene blue, makes it an extra bit deeper. And now with the green, I'm going to do a bit of splatter as well. Going to add a little bit of splatter at the top where this is beginning to dry as well. Now I'm going to continue with the blue facade of the bakery. So starting off with the door. Just being very careful. I don't want to overly touch this area and smudge it, but at the same time I'd like them to touch in a few areas, so I'm going to be very careful. Okay, that's the door, kind of stops somewhere here, so I'm just going to make a slight marking so I know where to stop. That's a little archway. Bring it down a bit, and then I'm going to finish that off with a blue line here. Bring it down a bit more. Slightly more down. I'm trying to create kind of straight lines, but it's not always possible, especially with watercolors. Okay, so that's the archway done. So you can see again, I'm not really worried about too much of details. I just want to create an impression, so it looks, or it has an impression of this shop front. And you can see I'm working a bit more slower here because I have a lot more details to tackle here compared to the other areas that I just painted. That's one archway. I'm going to do another one here. And the last one, which is hidden over there. Just filling that area in with blue. And just making sure to add a few drops of blue in between there as well. Okay, so now for the window, doesn't come all the way down. It comes only just about here, 2/3 of the height of the door. I'm going to make a little line there, leaving some space for that bush, finishing that line off maybe finishing with a blue line here. So that's where the window is going to be. Now I'm going to work on these lines, the vertical lines, trying to keep it as straight as possible, but it's not always possible. You can turn your paper if you like to create a bit more steadier lines, but it's okay if you cannot. So I'm standing and painting so I can get a better view of what I'm doing. I always love standing to paint. When I sit down, the angle is changed and I don't really like how I see the painting. And there's a lot of light reflection as well, which I personally don't prefer. And also standing and painting makes my illustration look more dynamic compared to when I'm sitting down. So it's just my personal interest to stand while I paint. Now there's a lot of light coming through from the inside, and I'm going to use a little bit of bright yellow, gamboge yellow. That's one of those warm yellows, to make a little suggestion of light. I might need a little bit of orange as well to make it more warmer, so I'm going to use some cadmium orange mixed with this yellow, and then I can add that here just to show some light reflection. Maybe a little bit here and a bit here as well. And obviously inside there's a lot of details going on. First up, I'm going to start with this lampshade. Using the same colour, just a mixture of gamboge and cadmium orange. There's another lampshade here, and there's another one there. I'm going to add a bit more water to dilute it slightly so it's not too dark. There's another one there, because that's not our main focus of interest, so I'm not going to make it too detailed. I can also see some sunflowers inside that window. For that I'm going to use the yellow, the same yellow, just make suggestion of sunflower here. That's there. I'm not going to do all the details inside the window, just the main things that I feel is interesting. Now, to avoid doing all the details, I'm going to try and work wet and wet, just wetting that area for a little colour splash, because I can see lots of colours in there, but I'm not going to look at all the details. So I'm going to squint my eyes a little bit just to find what sort of details I have there. Sorry, what sort of colours I have there, and I'm going to eliminate all the details. So I can see one of those deep greens over here inside, and some over here. I can also see a little bit of brown to orange colour as well. Not worried about washing my brush or anything. I'm just going to add some colours, and then I'm going to leave a few areas white because I can see some cards sitting here at the shop front, just to show that there is a few things arranged here. Okay, so that's just a bit of detail there. Going to do the same thing with some deep green on this side as well. And again, I'm going to leave some white unpainted areas. I think I need a bit of brown for the sunflower. Okay, I think that's enough details for the shop front. Add in that pot of plant over here. I'm going to use some bright permanent rose. And then I'm going to use sap green to work around those plants. So again, using the tip of my brush, I can add as many details or as little details as I like, but I'm choosing not to add a lot of details, just going to keep it quite simple, quite flowy at this stage, and then I can probably add some details when I'm working with ink. So that's a nice bush that's there. I can also do splatters. And now for the pot. It looks quite dark. I can't really see a lot of details. I'm just going to add like a very basic deep grey colour. So I'm mixing burnt sienna and indanthrene blue to get a very grey colour. Just going to add that there. Just creating the shape of the pot. And that is the base of the shop front as well. So I realize that I need to bring that blue down a bit more, which I'm going to do in a minute. So, and I know these things will happen even if I plan a lot. So I just think and work as I go along. So just some colour for the street. Now finishing off that blue for the shop front, as well as here. And then I want to leave some blue here as well. Some grey for the inside. Make it more grey. Yes. To leave a few areas unpainted there just to show details of hanging basket. So now you can see I've changed quite a bit here where the hanging basket flowers are coming a little bit down compared to what's seen on the photograph. And these are the little things that you can't really control, especially if you are splattering. And that's something that I like, that I don't need to control my painting all the time. I'd like to see where it takes me and then work around it. Okay. Now going to add a little bit more deeper colour for the shop front. That's more deep blue. Maybe add a bit more detail. So now that it's nice and dry, I can go in and add an extra layer just to show the darker colours. And for this area as well, just a little bit more details. Okay, continue those lines here as well. Again, not worried about straight lines, just trying my best to stick to the lines that are already there, so I don't smudge the other areas of the window. And let's stop with the blue there, and perhaps add a little bit of deep blue here as well, just that colour, and then I will come back to it with ink to enhance it a bit more. Just adding some details of the foliage with the same blue, so it looks a bit more interesting. It looks more natural as well. And I'm going to do the same for the window on top as well, so adding an extra layer of darker colour where I need it. So that looks more like it, and that's it. And now for that inside of the window, which looks quite bland, just going to add some grey, leaving little areas of white. Now for some details of brickwork here as well. Going to start off with a mixture of burnt sienna and indanthrene blue. This is more to the brown side, so it's not very grey, it's got more burnt sienna. Just adding some blobs of colour here, and I'll come back to it later with ink. The same goes for the colours there, and a little bit here as well. And I can make that area where the pot is a bit more darker. And you can add any sort of detail here with the tip of your brush. You can even do a bit of splattering if you like. One thing that I forgot is the inside of this window here, which needs a bit more colour. Just trying not to work over that yellow, which I need it to be nice and bright. Before I stop, I'd like to add a tiny bit more detail in just some neutral tint or grey. That there is a board here which I'm going to do a little bit of detail on that. Oops, don't want to sponge out anywhere else. So I can't really see a lot of details because it is in such an angle that I can't see what's written on the board or anything, to be honest, but I'm just going to create that shape. And I know there are two lights here as well. I can't really do a lot of details because they are white in colour, so I'm just going to add the main stand of that light. I don't know what's on the other side. Whatever it may be, I'm just going to copy the shape, but I could choose not to paint that. But because it looks interesting on this, but I'm just going to create that shape. Maybe add some details with ink. I can see a little bit of the hanging basket bracket over here. And a little bit here as well. So just adding an extra splash of colour here as well, just to make it look interesting. And there is a pipe that is going down this way. I don't think I can get it into a straight line, but I'll try my best just to add that colour there, and the rest of it will be done in ink. And then maybe add some colour there for brickwork as well. I just need a colour splash and the rest will come in ink. So now I'm going to stop here, dry my illustration, maybe take a break and then come back to it and ink it. Welcome back. So I'm going to try and finish this illustration using ink. I'm using Winsor & Newton ink, and this is violet ink. So I'm going to start off. The pen that I'm using is a mapping pen with a mapping nib. So I'm going to dip that into my ink. Going to start off with this window at the top. My picture is completely dry except for this little splash of paint here. So I'm going to try and work around it for now. So starting off with the top of the window where it is a bit more darker, there is definitely a darker area there. I'm not going to do the line continuously, I'm just going to break it down, only add some details where it's necessary. As I'm working, I can also add little details of bricks as well. you can use small lines, short lines called hatching to depict a darker area. I'm going to do the other side now. Again, not a lot of, again, not continuous lines, trying to break it down. Some darker lines here as well, just to add in the details. You can see I'm not outlining the whole thing. I'm just adding lines to enhance or show darker areas. So there is a little extra detail here on that window frame. And now with these lines as well, I'm going to try and break it down again, just to show the shadows that are falling on the window panes, but otherwise I'm going to keep it quite minimal, just enhancing these details. And now I've got this large foliage here, so I'm going to try and work around it. And also add some details for the last bit of the window there. If you like, you can add little details of flowers, but not necessary again. Try and stick to what comes first to you, or try and stick to how your hand moves. The whole idea is to enjoy scribbling like this, at the same time create something beautiful. And for me personally, it is very therapeutic. I do make mistakes, but I like line wash or watercolor and ink for the fact that I can try and cover up or work over those mistakes and not worry too much about it. So that's the window kind of done. I'm not going to go into any details inside the window. I can see very little of what's inside, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. Maybe enhance this line a bit, so I know where the window stops, the window frame stops, and I know where the window panes start. Maybe make that a bit more darker for shadow. Now for the brickworks on top, I'm not going to go in and draw an outline for every brick, just going to enhance it, just adding only those darker lines. The key to keeping it quite simple is only to add a few darker lines where the shadows fall, and obviously there will be an area where there is a highlight as well, so we just need to make sure that I'm not working over it. And also add a little bit of detail of brick here as well. The same goes for the other side. Trying to keep those details to a minimum. It is so easy to overwork. So I'm going to try and be very conscious when I'm doing details. So I'm going to try and do a few bricks here where there is a colour splash, because I think going over them with some details would make that area really focused and stand out. Okay, so I think that's about it. For the light that I left out, I'm going to try and add an outline. Just try and shade it and give it an impression of a light. I can always add more highlights with gouache once I'm finished. Now for this board, there are a lot of lines that I could add here to make it look more interesting, which I couldn't do with just watercolors, because obviously I wouldn't be able to add all these details in watercolors. Watercolors are best when there are very less details and when it's kept really loose. I know there's something written there, so just going to suggest that. Okay. Now this area where it is a bit more darker because of all the foliage and the shadows falling, I feel that it might be a good idea to give some details of brick in between the foliage as well. Okay. There is an electric wire that's running along the top there, and all these little details of electric wires and things like that adds on to the beauty of the painting. Now for the hanging basket, I'm going to start off with a bracket first. Just enhancing it, just basically sketching with the pen. I can also add extra flower-like shapes here, just outlines, just to show there are white flowers. I've just outlined them. So I'm just going really darker with scribbly lines, just in areas where I like it to be darker, and the other areas can be left just as it is, with very minimal amount of pen lines, so it doesn't really look overworked. Okay, that's the top of the hanging basket where I wanted to make it a bit more darker, but as I'm coming down, I don't really need so much of detail, so I can stop when I need, just only enhancing the areas that are really standing out. So especially this area, it looks like quite a muddle here because of all the background color and the details going on in the background. I think I need to enhance the foliage here. I think it would look great if I enhanced it. And again, I can always come back to it with some white gouache or a white pen. And a little bit of deeper color here as well. Okay. I'm going to do the same for the foliage here as well. So obviously I've got some deeper green here, so I'm going to enhance that deeper green area with a bit more of lines. You can even give little leaf-like shapes if you prefer. It's just a personal choice. Just making some lines here as well, because I did leave a bit of white unpainted shapes here just to depict flowers. So all these splatters, I'm just going to try and connect them with lines, just making them look more like flowers on a stem. You can do the same here as well if you like. Okay, so I think I've got enough details on the foliage. Now I'm going to go and work on these areas here, the shop front. You can see that I'm using a lot of textured lines, so they're not really plain lines. I'm adding a lot of texture to it, a lot of pen marks, just to make it look very quirky. And now for the details of the door. That's the main post. I don't know what that is, but I'm not going to add that color now. I'll see how it goes, and then in the end I can add more color. That's another detail of the door. Now for the inside details of that door, just going to add a little bit of darker rendering or hatching here, just to show the darker area there. And now for the details on the windows. Just darkening this area. Just going to do the same for these areas as well. So just darkening the area with ink. You could do it with watercolor if you prefer, but I just like the sketchy outcome of using a dip pen and ink. So there is a little light reflection here, so I'm just going to enhance that, just bringing out that light reflection, just adding an extra outline there. It just makes it pop out. And then that's the bottom part of the window, just darkening that area, making it look a bit more realistic. Oops. And the final blue post of the doorway. And now for this foliage, the potted plant in front. Just enhancing only the dark areas. It looks quite bright in the front, so I'm not going to work on each and every bit of that potted plant. Just enhancing the area. Maybe creating like a little shadow. So you can see it's quite bright in this area. I'm going to leave it like that and then just add some details only in that dark green area. So the watercolors kind of suggest where I need to enhance, more or less. But in some areas I might need to just add extra pen lines just to make it look beautiful. Now a little bit of brickwork detail here might look really good, so just doing that. You can add brick detail here, but it's not the main focus point, so I'm not going to worry too much. Now finally, just a bit more details here. There's a little bracket that is hanging down here, it looks more like a bracket, I think. So just going to add that detail. I think it would have been better without that, but I'm too late for it now, so just going to try and enhance that. And now for that pipe that's running along the side of the building. I can't keep straight lines, so I'm going to try my best, but if I can't, it's not the end of the world. And some more brickwork if you like, not necessary, but just an option. I'm not going to go into all the details inside the window because I think it would make it look really, really cluttered. So I'm going to leave it like that. As well as the doorway. I think I could add some detail of a door. So I think this could be a door here. Just going to draw that now, and then I can use watercolor to paint it. It just sort of gives me a sense of perspective if I did add a door there. So that's why I'm adding a door there. That's just the shape of the door, and then I'm going to add some watercolor now straight away. So perhaps some deep, the same grey but in a deeper tone. So just made that door a bit more darker, and then there's a doormat. It could be anything inside. Not really worried, just probably give a few lines for perspective. And I'm going to get a smaller brush just for some gouache details. So I've got a very thin brush, which is size, it says size 4, but it's really thin. I could even use like a rigger brush. It's a very old brush, so I don't know what size that is, but it's a very thin, long line, long bristles, and it helps me to add details, especially when I'm going to work with a bit of gouache now, to add some highlights, as well as the name of the shop or the bakery as well. So I'm going to go straight into the tube, and then probably just make a little sketch of the letters. I'm very bad with calligraphy, so I'm just going to scribble across there. And for some highlights of flowers, I'm just going to add a few splashes, a few dots of white, so it makes it really stand out. Just a bit of highlights on these posts as well. And I'm going to leave it like that now. I think I'm done. So it looks like I am done. I'm not sure yet until I have taken a break, and I will come back to it and see if it really looks better. But for now I'm going to stop working on it. I think one tiny bit of detail or highlight would be the lights that are on top of the lights here. So just going to add little specks of white so it looks very highlighted. So I hope this tutorial was enjoyable. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time with more tutorials. Bye.